Hey, welcome back. This is Boring History for Sleep. So tonight we'll be talking about something you don't often hear in history books. Toilets. Ancient toilets, and what they quietly reveal about daily life long ago. Before we begin, if you enjoy these calm journeys into the past, please consider subscribing or leaving a like. It really helps. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? You can share in the comments below. Now, let's get comfortable and begin. So let's begin with the everyday. The places where people lived, ate and worked. And of course, the places where they had to go. In ancient Rome, toilets were everywhere. Not private bathrooms, but long stone benches with rows of round holes. People sat side by side, often with no walls between them. It was noisy, it was busy, and it was normal. You might sit next to a neighbour, a soldier, or even a stranger, and carry on a quiet conversation while you both took care of your needs. Beneath those benches, channels of water sometimes flowed, carrying waste away into the sewers. The Romans even had the Great Cloaca Maxima, one of the oldest sewer systems in the world. It drained water and waste into the Tiber River, keeping the city moving, even if the smell lingered in the air. And for cleaning, the Romans used something unusual to us, a sponge tied to a stick. It was rinsed in water or vinegar and shared among many. To them this was simply practical. To us it might seem strange, but it shows how different cultures handle the same problem in their own way. Far from Rome, in ancient China, things looked different. People often used simple pits dug into the ground, with wooden seats or stone slabs laid over them. Some were built near farms or even connected to pigsties. Waste was collected, not thrown away, because it could be used as fertilizer. In this way, nothing was wasted. Every part of life had a purpose. In Greece, public toilets existed too, though often smaller. Many were connected to bathhouses. People washed, bathed, and relieved themselves in the same complex. Cleanliness was tied to daily routine, though by our standards it may not have seemed so clean. And then, centuries later in medieval Europe, castles had their own design. Small chambers called garderobes were built high in the walls. A wooden seat over a hole let waste drop straight down, often into the moat below. It was cold, draughty, and far from private. In winter, the wind would whistle through the opening, chilling anyone who sat there. Still, for the time, it was considered a convenience. For the ordinary villager, though, life was simpler. Most homes had a chamber pot, just a ceramic bowl or bucket kept near the bed. In the morning, it was emptied into the street or into a cesspit dug behind the house. Walking through a medieval alley, you would need to step carefully, and often you could smell the way people lived before you ever saw it. Everywhere, across time and place, toilets remind us of something important. Life was not only about kings and battles, it was about small, ordinary acts that everyone shared. These quiet corners of daily life, though rarely spoken of, shaped the rhythm of every day. When we think of toilets today, we almost always imagine privacy, a closed door, a quiet, separate space. But in much of the ancient world, that idea simply didn't exist. In Rome, the public toilet was as much a social place as the marketplace. Long benches of stone lined with holes could seat dozens at once. Men, and sometimes women too, sat side by side. Conversation flowed as easily as the water running below. It may feel unusual to us, but for them, the act was not hidden or secret. It was simply part of the day. You might meet a friend there, or pause to chat about politics, trade, or the latest news. The toilet was another corner of city life. The Greeks had a similar approach. In some cities, public latrines were connected to the baths. You would enter to wash and relax, but also to use the facilities. Bathing, grooming, and relieving yourself happened in the same setting, often with others nearby. The separation between public and private was thinner than it is today. Medieval Europe was different, but still less private than modern times. In crowded towns, chamber pots were shared by families and often emptied into the same ditches or cesspits used by many neighbours. Privacy was rare, especially for the poor. In cities, whole streets might rely on the same communal pits, which were dug deep into the ground until they had to be cleared. Clearing them was unpleasant work, yet necessary for the life of the town. In castles, garderobes were built as small side rooms. While more private than a Roman latrine, they were not sealed off. A simple wooden door, if any at all, was all that separated you from the hall. And sometimes garderobes were built in. Daily life in the past was shaped not only by where people went, but also by how they cleaned themselves afterward. The solutions were inventive, practical, and often very different from what we know today. In ancient Rome, after using a public latrine, a sponge tied to a stick, known as a tessorium, was dipped in water or vinegar and reused. It was shared among many. To modern eyes, it might seem uncomfortable or even unsanitary. Yet for Romans, it was simply a tool, a practical solution to a universal problem. Elsewhere, people used rags, straw, moss, sand, or even snow. In China, water was often used for cleansing, poured from small buckets or poured into channels. In Japan, small scoops of water were common, reflecting a careful, almost ritualistic approach to cleanliness. Hygiene could also be connected to seasons and climate. In winter, snow might serve as a cleanser. In drier regions, sand or ashes were practical. The materials available shaped the customs, and customs shaped daily life. Interestingly, in some cultures, these cleaning practices also reflected social norms. Who could use certain materials, or who had access to fresh water, often mirrored the hierarchies of society. Even something as simple as wiping or washing revealed patterns of privilege, wealth, and routine. And while these methods may feel strange to us, they show a consistent truth. Humans everywhere have always found ways to care for themselves, with ingenuity shaped by environment, culture, and circumstance. Cleanliness, like eating or sleeping, is a universal concern, one that connects us to people long ago in ways we may not immediately notice. So did the challenges of managing waste. What was once a simple pit behind a house became a complex problem when thousands of people lived close together. In medieval Europe, streets often doubled as open drains. Chamber pots emptied directly into alleys or rivers. Rainwater washed some of the waste away, but much remained, mingling with mud and filth. The air carried the scent of life, unfiltered and unrelenting. The connection between waste and disease was not fully understood at the time, yet looking back, it is clear how poor sanitation shaped health. Contaminated water led to outbreaks of dysentery, cholera, and other illnesses. Entire neighbourhoods could suffer, and cities struggled to keep up with the burden of growing populations. Rome, despite its sophisticated sewers, faced similar issues. Sewers could overflow, public latrines, while advanced, were crowded. Waste ran through the streets during heavy rains, carrying bacteria and parasites that people could not see. Even in Asia, densely populated towns relied on careful collection and disposal of waste. In Japan and China, human waste was often collected and transported to fields as fertilizer, a practice that was practical but not without risk. Parasites and disease could travel along these routes, linking hygiene directly to daily labour and the economy. The lesson is subtle but striking. Toilets were not merely private conveniences, they were central to the health and survival of entire communities. How humans disposed of waste influenced epidemics, urban planning, and even the rise and fall of cities. And so, as quiet as it may seem, the story of toilets is deeply entwined with the story of civilization itself. Every alley, pit, and latrine left traces, sometimes unpleasant, always revealing, of the delicate balance between life, health, and community. Next, we can move into segment 5, toilets of the elite versus the poor, where contrasts in comfort and design really highlight social hierarchies. Shall I continue with that now? You said, next ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's segment 5, toilets of the elite versus the poor, continuing in the same calm third-person style. Segment 5, toilets of the elite versus the poor. Across history, toilets have been a quiet reflection of wealth and status. The comfort or discomfort of daily life often depended on where someone stood in society. In castles and palaces, garderobes projected from thick stone walls, offering a primitive form of privacy. Some were connected to flowing water or elaborate pits designed to carry waste far from living quarters. Luxury bathhouses in medieval Europe featured stone seats, running water, and even decorative touches, combining sanitation with leisure. By contrast, the lives of peasants and labourers were far less comfortable. Most relied on simple chamber pots or shared communal pits. Wooden seats over deep holes, clay jars or open ditches were common. There was no insulation from cold, no privacy, and often no control over when the pits were emptied. Life at the lower end of society meant navigating daily routines in close contact with the consequences of waste management. Even within cities, the contrast was visible. Streets were often lined with cesspits for the poor, while nobles' homes boasted private chambers with carefully designed waste disposal. Hygiene was a marker of privilege, yet necessity and practicality shaped solutions at every level. This contrast extended beyond Europe. In ancient China, wealthier families might have enclosed toilet rooms with wooden seats, while farmers relied on simple pits, whose contents returned to the fields. In Japan, some towns collected waste from wealthier households separately, recognizing its value as fertilizer and maintaining order among social classes. The differences were stark, yet they reveal a universal truth. Toilets were more than tools for comfort. They were mirrors of society. They silently recorded status, access, and opportunity, reminding us that even the most private aspects of life have always carried social meaning. Across cultures, cleanliness is often held spiritual as well as practical significance. Toilets, waste, and washing were not merely matters of hygiene. They were woven into beliefs, rituals, and moral codes. In Judaism, laws of purity guided everyday life. Certain practices dictated when and how a person could cleanse themselves after using the toilet, ensuring both spiritual and physical cleanliness. These rules reflected a deep respect for order and personal responsibility. In Islam, ritual washing after relieving oneself is a fundamental practice, emphasizing purification before prayer. Water is central, and even today many mosques maintain facilities specifically designed for this purpose, echoing centuries-old customs. Hinduism similarly connects washing and sanitation to spiritual purity. Ancient texts describe daily ablutions and careful attention to bodily cleanliness, with sacred rivers playing a dual role as sources of water and as symbols of purification. Even in Christianity, cleanliness has carried moral undertones. Monastic orders often incorporated washrooms and latrines into their daily routines, with an awareness that spiritual life and bodily care were interconnected. Ritual washing, the careful disposal of waste, and the separation of spaces for certain activities all reinforce discipline and order. In many ways, these practices show that toilets were never purely private or mundane. They were spaces where daily life intersected with the sacred, where ordinary acts reflected broader cultural values. Respect, cleanliness, and ritual were intertwined, reminding everyone that even the smallest actions carried significance. Through these rituals and beliefs, humans across time found meaning in the most ordinary acts, proof that even a toilet can hold a place in the story of civilization, morality, and shared human experience. Long after people have gone, toilets remain as silent witnesses to daily life. Archaeologists often uncover cesspits, latrines, and chamber pots, and through them they can reconstruct the routines, diets, and habits of ancient societies. A simple pit can reveal remarkable detail. Seeds, bones, and fragments of food show what people ate. Parasites preserved in waste tell us about diseases that once circulated through a community. Even the wear on a latrine stone seat or the design of a chamber pot can indicate social class, gender roles, or household organisation. In cities, archaeologists trace the evolution of sewage systems. They learn how communities managed water, coped with growth, and adapted to the constant challenge of sanitation. Each discovery tells a story not just of waste, but of human ingenuity, adaptation, and resilience. In rural areas, pits near farms reveal how waste was reused as fertilizer. This simple cycle connected humans to the land, turning what might seem unclean into nourishment for crops. Even the humblest toilet can reflect a sophisticated understanding of resource management. Toilets, though often overlooked, are time capsules. They preserve the ordinary moments of life, what people ate, how they lived, and even what they valued. In studying them, historians gain a rare intimacy with the past, glimpsing the quiet, daily realities that shaped civilizations. Every latrine tells a story, reminding us that the ordinary is extraordinary when viewed through the lens of history. In the quiet corners of history, toilets tell a story that is both ordinary and profound. They reveal the rhythms of daily life, the challenges of growing cities, the contrast between wealth and poverty, and even the ways humans have sought spiritual cleanliness. From the crowded latrines of Rome to the humble chamber pots of medieval villages, every solution reflects the environment, culture, and values of the people who used it. In their practicality, their ingenuity, and even their discomfort, toilets connect us to lives long past. Today, modern plumbing and private bathrooms have transformed what was once a public or communal act into something almost invisible. Yet the echoes of the past remain. Toilets remind us that no matter the century or the society, humans everywhere have faced the same basic realities. We eat, we live, we work, and we must relieve ourselves. And in that simple truth, there is a shared humanity. Even centuries apart, even continents away, the act of attending to daily needs binds us to those who came before. There is something gentle, almost comforting in recognizing that connection. So as the story winds down, it leaves a quiet reflection. Life is built not only from grand events, kings and battles, but from countless small acts, shared, necessary, and profoundly human. A final pause, a deep breath, and the night settles around the ordinary, extraordinary lives of people who lived long ago.